two panelists, both of whom are used to waiting for Randi arriving on the train from different directions, that she does tend to run 10 minutes late. So we're going to get started nevertheless. Don't have to worry about constructive feedback from this crowd. This is good. All right, and let me just say at the outset, we're going to make sure that you all have plenty of opportunity to be part of this panel. We really want to make sure that all of you have an opportunity to ask questions and really interact with the panel. So we really heard some inspirational words from Mike Johnston this morning about the scope of the challenge that we face in changing what's going on in our public schools across this country, and some really thoughtful words about what it's going to take. This idea that we need to build broad-based coalitions that are defining the public interest and stepping away from sort of a conflict of self-interest between reformers and those perhaps who want to protect the system as it is. And yet, when we talk about how reform actually unfolds in school districts across the country, and as Mike pointed out, there are 14,000 of them, we rarely see that frame actually unfold. And part of what we want to explore on today's panel is, is there sort of a possibility for collaboration in what's often a conflictual dynamic between management of a school district and the unions that represent teachers? Or is it really a case of managing conflict, something that may be publicly portrayed as collaboration, but that is actually a pretty tough negotiation, even if it happens behind closed doors? So we really want to get into that and encourage you all to think about competing visions that are out there in the country right now about how to do this work. And the idea, on the one hand, that if we have great, hard-driving district leadership, this problem is too urgent to wait for collaborative conditions to emerge. On the other hand, we have some folks who believe that the only way to get sustainable change is to invest all the stakeholders in that change. And so we have to do the hard work, whatever it takes, however long it takes, to produce those collaborative conditions. And frankly, we're running a national experiment right now in those two models. And I think the jury is out. We have student achievement results that are trending up in districts that have taken either of those two paths. So one of the things that I encourage people to think about, and I encourage the panelists to think about, is are we going to see a clear winner? And if so, what's going to prevail? But let me just say that was a long preamble because it's not even 1 o'clock yet. So, but I am actually going to get started here, and I'm going to ask Dr. Mayo to begin. Dr. Mayo has been superintendent in New Haven now for 17, 18 years. So a long, and probably one of the longest serving superintendents in the country, I would expect, of a significantly sized urban district. And Dr. Mayo, I'd like you to begin by really just giving us an overview, and this is a tough task, in 5 minutes or less, of the district's reform strategy, what you actually got in this last round of negotiation, this contract that so many people are talking about. And then I'm going to ask Andres to talk about the Baltimore contract deal that just was agreed this November, right? And how that relates to your district's reform strategy and how these two things connect. So Dr. Mayo.
First of all, let me just say that Mayor John DeStefano was invited to sit on this panel, and of course he's in 85-degree weather in Miami watching a baseball game. So let me just say I wonder whether I should be there too. Let me just try to do this in 5 minutes that I've been given, and that's going to be kind of difficult to do. I'm an educator, and we sort of go on and on and on. But anyway, Alex has made me swear.
They'll interrupt you if I don't. So.
Oh, I tell you. 5 or less. Okay. First of all, it was Mayor DeStefano who came to me one day and handed me a stack of paper and said, "Read it." Okay. Came back about a week later. Let's discuss it. And what it was whether the plan of Michelle Rhee in D.C., what she was trying to sell the unions on. It was about the plan in New Orleans, the portfolio approach to looking at educating our young people. And nevertheless, he said, we need to change what we're doing, I think, in New Haven in education. And from that, we came up with a plan, and I'm going to kind of jump into it, of what we thought was important. I mean, we went through a lot of people talking with them before we kind of got to this. But anyway, we looked at the portfolio approach to educating kids at schools and so forth, and realized that you cannot have the same answer for every school, which is contrary to the way that I've dealt with things as the superintendent of schools. If one school got 3 computers, every school got 3 computers. Our whole approach now is whatever the school needs, let's come up with a needs assessment, and let's give that school what they pretty much needed. So we have this portfolio approach to education at this particular time. We met with the union and we tried to get some things out of them. It started off just a little rocky, not too bad, but one of the things we decided that we did not want to have for some of the schools that were low performing, did not want to have unions. Big mistake, okay? And of course, we later met with the national representatives, with our local representatives. Gov Harris and I met with them. And they were very, very compromising and simply said, Reggie Mayo, Gov Harris, we will give you pretty much anything that you want, but there will be unions. And Gov and I went back to the mayor and said, you got to give up that idea of no unions. And, there's a lady that came in, Joan Devlin, that says she will work with us. The union, the national level of union will work with us, but absolutely unions will have to be on the table. So you know what, we got to work and set up a number of committees, and of course decided, and of course this is with the union, all of this is with the union, collaboration with them, that we would tier our schools. Tier 1 schools would be those schools who are performing at the highest level, Tier 2, in between, and of course Tier 3 schools, which were the lowest performing schools. They also brought the fact that with those low performing schools, central office would have a lot more to say about how they function, how they operate. The Tier 1 schools would have a lot of autonomy. They could do pretty much what they wanted. They could change work rules. They could change the length of the school year, the length of the school day. 75% of the staff would have to vote for it, leave them alone, and let them go to work. The Tier 3 schools, we wanted to have some autonomy, not some, complete autonomy over, or turn them over to a charter organization. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been saying that. Okay, 2 years ago, I would not have been saying that. But right now, we do have a charter school based on this work that we're doing with the Tier 3 schools. We have one that's a turnaround school, and of course, another one that is in school improvement. Now, with the turnaround school, the principal goes in, all the staff has to reapply. 50% of the staff can't come back. And of course, you put new staff in that school. You have new work rules, longer school day, longer school year. It's working out fairly well. First year for it, I think it's going along very, very well. Talent, probably the most important thing out of this contract was, and my staff has finally gotten to the point where they do fairly well in terminating poor non-tenured teachers, okay? Tenured teachers, not as well, okay? Not as well, serious problem with that. So of course there was a lot of discussion with the union, and the union just simply said, you know what, we don't want bad teachers either. That's what they FT. Dave Ciccarello, who's president of the local, the national, and of course the state representative said, we're in total agreement with it. We want to work with you on that. So the other thing we wanted to do was to put performance as a piece of the evaluation process, okay? And that is something that is unheard of, and then the contract specifically says that you cannot judge or evaluate a teacher based on standardized test scores. And of course, that is something we develop a nice teacher evaluation piece that does include teacher performance and the evaluation of teachers. It's rated at about 80%, another 20% is on skills that they may have and the values that they carry relative to educating our young people. That is probably the most important thing, in my opinion, that came out of this. You cannot run a school district unless you have the best talent in the world. There are other things that we did. We have surveys for parents and students relative to what is happening at the school around collaboration, engagement, respect and safety. Those are so revealing. You know, personally, I looked at certain principals in schools and say, oh, it's a great school. Surveys came back a little differently, okay? And I'm just saying, open the eyes, my eyes, open a lot of other surveys. They surveyed central office, and of course people have a shot at me and my staff in central office. What are you doing? What can you do that's better, and that kind of thing. The other thing we want to do is get the whole community involved in this thing, so we have a lot of institutions that are involved, and that is working out extremely well. United Way, the business community, Yale University is doing an exceptional job in terms of supporting us. The other piece of this is
1 minute warning.
We decided that is one of our goals. We wanted to ensure that every kid had the opportunity to go to college. Okay, every kid had the opportunity to go to college, and that we would provide scholarships for them. Let me just say we're working very hard on curriculum, instruction, to get the best talent so that we can educate our kids to go to college. And Yale University has agreed to give $4 million each and every year, okay, to young people, and a promise to them that if they behave themselves, if they have a 3.0 grade point average, if they give up time for community service, then they will get $8,000 each and every year to attend one of the public schools, public universities in the state of Connecticut. So let me just end there, okay?
Thank you.
I think I got most of it.
Let me just quickly mention that one of the key features of this contract as it relates to teacher evaluation is an accelerated dismissal process, so that in the course of a single year, a teacher can be identified on November 1st as at risk of receiving the lowest rating if by March 31st that teacher has not improved through there are sort of 3 evaluations that are validated externally. But if improvement has not occurred, those teachers can be terminated for incompetence under existing state law. So that, I think, that we're sort of in the first year of that now, so we actually don't know how that's going to end up. But I believe 66 teachers, 2/3 of whom were tenured, were put on notice of that status as of November 1st. And it is now March 25th. So, Andres.
So let me first start by saying that New Haven, the work of New Haven around the contract was huge for us. It was proof that something was possible in a context that had seemed frozen before. So just the fact that New Haven got to where it got before the time that we started negotiation was tremendously meaningful for us. As a matter of fact, in my first conversation with my 2 union heads, and I took them out to dinner because they wanted to know what I wanted, what I told them I wanted was New Haven Plus. And what they responded was, you don't have enough money to pay for it. So it was big, but let me also say that I question the frame of the conversation. I don't think this opposition or this dichotomy of the aggressive superintendent versus the collaborative superintendent has anything to do with reality. The work cannot be done without collaboration under the surface of whatever the rhetoric is going on. So the question is, what do you collaborate toward? And that will always mean that you will be in conflict sometimes and you will not in other times. And how hard you push and what you push for is deeply contextual and is deeply about the district. And in Baltimore, and I need to talk a little bit about the district, when I walked into Baltimore, I was the 7th superintendent in 10 years. It was very different than Dr. Mayo at this stage in his life. I walked in as a change superintendent who was going to do some very aggressive things. And the context of entry was all about conflict. My union called for a vote of no confidence on me before school started, and I started on July 1st. And my first week of school, was welcomed by a work to rule. But over time, things change. And